On a quiet April morning in 1989, a young woman packed her car in Hattiesburg, said goodbye to the life she knew, and began a hopeful drive toward a new future in Austin. She had plans, she had family who loved her, and she had every intention of arriving at her destination. She never did. Her name was Denise Wells. And what happened after a single, desperate phone call from a Texas convenience store would become one of the most haunting unsolved disappearances of the late 1980s. Tonight, we follow her final known movements, the strange clues left behind, and the chilling questions that remain unanswered decades later. Denise Wells was 23 years old, independent, friendly, and determined to start over. Friends described her as someone who could strike up a conversation with anyone. Family members said she had a quiet confidence and a restless curiosity about the world beyond her hometown. In early April 1989, she made a decision that felt both exciting and necessary. She would leave Mississippi and move to Austin, Texas, a city known for opportunity, music, and a different pace of life. She packed her belongings into her brown 1981 Toyota Corolla, mapped out the drive, and set off alone. The trip should have taken roughly 9 hours. A straightforward route along highways cutting through Louisiana and into Texas. Nothing about the plan seemed risky. Nothing suggested danger. She told people she would call when she arrived. She never made that call. Instead, the first sign that something had gone wrong came when Karen phoned her mother from a convenience store somewhere in Texas. Her voice sounded strained but controlled. She said she had run out of money and gas. She needed help. Her mother, worried but not alarmed, wired her $200 through Western Union so she could continue the trip. Karen told her where she would pick up the money, Odessa. That would be the last confirmed contact anyone ever had with her. When Karen arrived in Odessa, witnesses later reported seeing her at the Western Union counter collecting the funds. Some remembered that she did not appear alone. A man, unidentified and never formally traced, was seen near her. No one could later agree on his description. No one could remember enough detail for a sketch. He was just a presence, a shadow in the background of a moment that would grow more significant with time. After that sighting, Denise Wells vanished. Days passed before her family realized something was deeply wrong. Calls to friends produced nothing. There was no sign she had arrived in Austin. Concern turned into fear, and a missing persons report was filed. Law enforcement began retracing her route, looking for any indication of where the journey had gone off course. They found her car. The brown Toyota Corolla was located at an apartment complex in Odessa. It was parked neatly, not abandoned in panic or hidden. Inside were Karen's personal belongings, clothes, papers, items that suggested she had no intention of leaving the vehicle behind permanently. The gas tank was nearly empty. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no broken glass, no obvious evidence of violence. It looked as though someone had simply parked the car and walked away. Investigators asked the most basic question first. Why would Karen leave her vehicle with all her belongings and disappear on foot in a city she did not know? There was no logical answer. The timeline tightened around that single moment at the Western Union office. That was the last place she was seen alive. That was the last place she interacted with anyone in a verifiable way. And yet, despite interviews and canvassing, no one could identify the man who had been near her. No one could explain where she went next. Theories began to form almost immediately. The most obvious was foul play. Karen, alone, low on money, stranded in an unfamiliar city, could have encountered someone who offered help and, instead, brought harm. It is a tragically common pattern in missing persons cases. Vulnerability creates opportunity. But there were oddities that made the case stranger than a simple abduction. Why was the car left in a residential complex parking lot rather than discarded somewhere remote? Why were her belongings still inside? If someone had harmed her, why leave the vehicle in a place where it would be easily found? Another theory briefly surfaced: voluntary disappearance. Could Karen have chosen to vanish? Those who knew her rejected this completely. She had spoken excitedly about her new life. She had stayed in close contact with her family. She had no history of running away or cutting ties. And if she intended to disappear, why call her mother for money? Why leave behind everything she owned? Investigators also considered the possibility of a random crime, a predator who saw an opportunity in a stranded traveler. Odessa in the late 1980s was an oil town, transient in nature, with people constantly passing through. Someone could have approached Karen, gained her trust, and then taken her somewhere no one would ever think to look. But without evidence, every theory felt like smoke. Karen's case slowly grew colder, leads dried up, witness memories faded. The unidentified man remained unidentified. Her family waited for answers that never came. Years passed, then decades. The disappearance of Karen Denise Wells became a name on a list of unsolved cases, revisited occasionally by detectives, true crime enthusiasts, and those who refused to let her memory disappear. Each time the case is reopened, investigators return to the same few facts: the phone call, the money transfer, the sighting in Odessa, the abandoned car. And the questions: what happened between the Western Union counter and that parked Corolla? Did Karen leave the car willingly with someone she trusted? Did she believe she was getting help, or was she forced away from it under threat? Why did no one at the apartment complex remember seeing anything unusual? How can a person vanish so completely in broad daylight? The case also highlights the limitations of the era. In 1989, there were no cell phones tracking movements, no surveillance cameras capturing every angle, no digital footprints. A person could move through a city almost invisibly. A crime could occur without leaving the trails modern investigators rely on. Karen's mother never stopped searching. Interviews years later revealed the pain of a parent trapped in uncertainty. Not knowing is its own form of torment. There is no closure, no funeral, no goodbye. Just a permanent question mark where a daughter's life should have continued. Some investigators believe the unidentified man seen with Karen holds the key. If he could be identified, perhaps the chain of events could finally be reconstructed. But with only vague recollections from witnesses decades ago, finding him is like chasing a ghost. Others suspect Karen may have encountered someone before even reaching Odessa, someone who followed her, someone who gained her trust during the journey. The phone call for money could have been part of a larger interaction, one investigators never fully uncovered. And then there is the simplest, most haunting possibility: that Karen asked the wrong person for help at the worst possible moment. The image that remains is stark. A young woman alone, low on gas, short on cash, standing in a convenience store in a city far from home, calling her mother for help. Relief when the money is wired. A brief interaction at a Western Union counter. A stranger nearby. And then, nothing. No confirmed sightings, no remains, no answers. Today, Karen Denise Wells would be in her late 50s. Her family still hopes that someone, somewhere, remembers something. A face, a conversation, a detail that seemed unimportant at the time. Because in cases like this, the smallest memory can unlock the biggest mystery. Her story endures because it is both ordinary and terrifying. Ordinary in that it began as a simple road trip toward a new life. Terrifying in how quickly that life disappeared without explanation. And as we retrace her final steps, we are left with the same uneasy feeling investigators felt in 1989, the sense that the truth is close, just out of reach, hidden in the silence between the known facts. Someone knows what happened to Karen Denise Wells. Someone saw something. Someone remembers. If this story moved you, share it. Cases like Karen's remain unsolved not because they are forgotten, but because the missing piece has not yet surfaced. Awareness keeps the search alive. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and if you have any information about this case, contact the appropriate authorities. Subscribe for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries, because sometimes the truth only comes to light when we refuse to stop looking.